So basically we'll go over some high features of GL, and then we'll go over some high features of AP, and then I'll cover some items that are new for GP 2015. First, I want to just kind of give you guys a brief overview of what the Dynamics GP model integration looks like. As you can see that everything works in a circle all the way pointing back to your general ledger with purchase order processing and fixed assets, inventory, sales order processing, payables management, bank rec, and receivables management. They all work together and essentially end up in your general ledger. Okay, so let's first talk about some features within your general ledger. You have the capability of recording transactions, verifying accuracy, posting transactions, maintaining history, maintaining budgets, and creating quick financial reports. So I'm going to switch over to my Great Plains 2013 application and just show you where you can do all of these items within Great Plains. Okay. In order to record transactions within your general ledger, you can access this two different ways. You can use your Financial Series button in the navigation pane over here. This will bring up all of the areas that you have access to within your financial general ledger. You have your transactions section, inquiry section, setup, then you have cards, routines, reports, and then utilities. And depending on what your security is will depend on what you see on this window. Now for recording transactions, you can click here in the transactions window underneath financial to see general, clearing, or quick journal, or you can click here on your top menu bar to transactions, financial, and then here you will also see all of those items that were listed on that main screen behind it. So if we're going to enter in a general transaction, you'll just go to Transactions, Financial, and General. And here you will see what a basic journal entry will look like within Great Plains. Your journal entry number will automatically be assigned. You can choose to include it on a batch or not. Here is your transaction date. And here's where you'll select what type of transaction this entry is going to be, whether it's standard or reversing. If you choose reversing, this option to enter a date here will not be grayed out, and then you can enter in the date that you want the reversing transaction to occur. You always want to keep your source document to be GJ, that means general journal, and then you can type in a reference if you want, and here's where you can select your currency ID. If you have multi-currency, then you'll understand changing that if you need to. And then here is when you can enter in your basic accounts with your debits and your credits. And then here you can save it if it is attached to a batch, or you can post it directly. Let's say that you have a journal entry in here that you need to correct or copy. You can choose one of these options here, and then post or save from this window. Whoop. There we go. Then you also have the option for a clearing entry. It's kind of the same thing as your journal entry, but you're going to enter an account number and then your offset account number, so that if you need to create, some clearing transactions, you can do that here. Again, you can add it to a batch if you're going to have more than one and you want to post them at the same time at a later date, or you can post it directly right here. You then have an option to do a quick journal. And a quick journal is if you're going to have a repetitive set of journal entries every month, you can set up a journal ID with a description, what your offset account is going to be, and then a list of the accounts. And so what this will do is if you select a quick journal that you've created, you will see here that the offset account was automatically filled in, and then one account was entered, and then you can enter in your debits and your credits. You can also add extra accounts here if they're not going to be on a monthly or weekly or daily quick journal. But if you're going to repetitively use the same account numbers, then I would suggest adding them to your journal ID. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is how you can post. As I mentioned prior, you can post directly from an individual transaction. You can add them to a batch. If you add them to a batch, you can access all of your general ledger journal entry batches by going to Financial, Transactions, and Batches. And here you can see, if I use the lookup button, these are all the batches that are available to be posted within my Fabricam system. Within this window, you can see the frequency, the last time it was posted, if it was posted, if it was a recurring batch. And here's your actual numbers. This shows you there's only one journal entry in here, and the total is $1,000. Now let's say that you want to review this batch before you post it. That's how you verify your accuracy, and you do that by printing an edit list. And to do so, when you're on the batch entry screen, you click on the Print button, and here you can see the name of your report, General Entry Edit List. Your report type is going to be standard if you are not using a template. And then your report destinations here, you can have it come to your screen, your printer, or if you want to save it to a file somewhere. For this case, we're just going to select screen so you can see what the report looks like. If I click OK, the report is generated. And here you can see what the standard report for a general transaction edit list looks like. You can see that the user ID here, your name of your batch, batch ID, your batch controls are all listed right here. And then in the next section is where you see your details, the journal entry number, the type of transaction, the transaction date, the original source document, and the transaction reference that was entered for this journal entry. Then you have your breakdown of distributions, account numbers, descriptions, debits and credits, and your totals. Now let's say that there is a batch that has several journal entries in it, and there are some errors on them. You will sometimes see an error message pop up here in this part, or down here at the bottom. It's always a good idea to print an edit list prior to posting, just to make sure that everything is in balance, there aren't any GL account numbers missing, if there's any errors or anything. It's always good to do that before you print before you post your batch. Okay. Another way to post within your journal ledger is selecting a series post. And here it shows you a list of all the batches that are available to post. And this gives you an opportunity to post all or some of the batches available at one time. And you can do that by selecting them individually. You can see the status changes from available to marked, or you can click Mark All and post them all at once. Okay, so we've covered transactions. And posting transactions and verifying your accuracy. Now, maintaining history. Great Plains allows you to maintain an unlimited number of years of historical data. And then you can have these multiple years show up or to be included on your on your financial reports, income statements, balance sheets. We also have the ability to maintain unlimited budgets. And you can do this for an individual account or for a range of accounts. I'm going to show you in Great Plains here where you can access budgets. Underneath Financial Transactions and Financial, you have a Budget Transactions window. And here is where you can enter in specific transactions associated with a budget ID. If you highlight the budget ID here, here's where you can manually enter in some budgets, ranges, and methods for specific account numbers or account ranges. Then you can create, based on those budget IDs, what the calculation method is going to be, if you want to include the balance, and then you can have it automatically calculate that budget for you. Down here in Inquiry, you can see that you can inquire on budget summaries, your budget versus actual, budget journal entry inquiries, and budget transaction summary. All right. Now that we have covered your budgets, let's talk about quick financial reports. Now, these are basic default reports that come with Great Plains. It could be your trial balance, cash flow, and earning reports. Now, to access these, again, on this financial main screen, you have this reports section here. Here you can access financial statements. You can create quick financial reports. You have advanced financial reports, management reporter reports if you have your Great Plains linked directly to management reporter. You have trial balance, and so on and so forth. For quick financial reports, you'll click on the quick financial link. Here are some default default reports that come with your Great Plains installation. You have a balance sheet, some cash flows, P&Ls, and statement of returned earnings. So let's just use the balance sheet for this purpose. Here are your optional columns and desired columns that you would like to show on the report. And then you can see that the net income loss source is defaulted to the P&L statement. You can also change down here whether you would like to show an open year for this report or historical years. So once you have decided what columns you would like to show, just simply click Save and Close Out. Come over to your financial statements here, and as you can see here, that they are again the list that comes with Great Plains. So if I just clicked on Balance Sheet, for this purpose I've created an option. You must always have an option when printing a report within Great Plains, no matter what module you are in. Now, to see what the options include, I'm going to click Modify. And here I am just basically saying I want my amounts to be in detail. I don't want to include any zero balances, unit accounts, or accelerator. You also have the option down here if you want to only report on a certain segment within your account structure. Once you've decided if there are any changes to the default here, you will need to insert those restrictions here. You also have the option to adjust or revert your columns that you did at the beginning of your quick financial setup. Then here for destination, this is where the default destination will be for the balance sheet financial report. You can choose to go to your screen, directly to your printer, or to a file. For this case, we're just going to have it come to your screen so you can get a quick look of what that report would look like. Once you've decided on your destinations, you'll come up to the top toolbar here and click Print. Well, you can see here that the demo setup is a little incorrect. So I would have to go back in and review my setup for my quick financial, because it seems that I selected the open year of 2012, and that year is going to be invalid for this balance sheet. So this is a good idea here that you can see, oh, well, there was an error in how I set things up, so I need to go back in and make some adjustments. All right, so that has covered most of your basic general ledger features. The next thing I want to talk about is how the general ledger integrates. Your transactions flow between functional areas, so you don't have to enter them multiple times in the application. So as I spoke earlier when we were looking at the integration map, you can enter in transactions in receivables, payables, purchase orders, fixed assets, and all of that will flow into your general ledger if you have post-through set up. If you have post-to set up, transactions that occur in those modules flow to the GL, but they sit as an open batch, where a user will have to go in and directly post that batch themselves. An example of a transaction that occurs is when a purchase order is entered in to the purchase order processing, it updates your vendor account in your payables management, and the ledger accounts are updated within your GL once that transaction is posted. So you can see the flow through 3 different areas within GP. Like I said earlier, your general ledger is the final destination for accounting and is strongly tied to all of the other areas within the system. But also keep aware that if you enter in transactions directly into the GL, that does not affect the other areas or other modules that you are currently set up to use. So it's always good to start within one of those modules for a transaction and let the system handle the flow the way that it is set up to handle. Okay, those are all of the areas that I have covered for the general ledger. So I'm going to open this up to, if you have any questions, to shoot them over, and I will see if I can get those answered for you at this time. Okay, well, there are no questions coming across. So I'm going to move on over to your payables features. Again, if there's something that you think of during this time for general ledger or payables, feel free to shoot the question over to me, and if we have time at the end, I will answer those or I will respond to you directly. Okay, so we have a question here about reconciling the general ledger. So let me take you back over to Great Plains. And here underneath financial and routines, you have several different options here. You have your reconcile to the GL, your period consolidation, your year-end closing. If you look here on checklist, here are some required items to happen within your GL. Reconciling to the GL is something that is a new feature in 2013 and is a great option for you to be able to run a reconciliation between other modules and the GL, so you can see if there's any discrepancies or any differences. Okay, I have another question coming through. Let's see, can you walk us through a quick journal with a journal entry? Okay. So here is a quick journal. Here is your offset account, and this is your transaction date. You can use the same journal ID for any time throughout your year. You can just change your transaction date here. Your offset account is always going to default to the account that you set up when setting up the journal ID. You can enter in as many accounts as you want here to be for your debits and credits to make sure they equal. Okay, if that doesn't help, then I will address your questions some more after this training session. There's another question that's coming through that's asking about changing the name of a GL account. What you would need to do is come over to Cards, Financial, and Account. Pull up one of your accounts that you want to change and simply update the description here. If it's not showing on your income statement or any reports, you will need to make sure that those are not hard-coded within the reports. If there is a problem with that, then Crestwood can assist you with that. All right. Again, if there's any other questions, I will address those at the end if there is time, or to you individually. All right, so let's get back over to Accounts Payable. Within Payables module, you can do several different things. You can set up new vendor records and all of their related information. You can set additional default settings and selections for vendors. You can enter multiple vendor addresses. You can enter default accounts to use for a specific vendor. You can enter beginning balances for vendors when you implement payables management. You can also view vendor history and summary information. So with that being said, I'm going to take us over to Great Plains, and I'm going to show you the vendor card and how all of that information is handled on your vendor card. So if you come back over to your navigation screen and click on Purchasing, you'll see that this window looks almost identical to your financial screen, with options being a little bit different underneath each category. So I'm going to talk about your vendor cards. Here is your main vendor maintenance window. I'm going to look up one of Fabricam's vendors to use as an example. You can see here that the vendor ID was created using the first few letters of the name with numbers after it. And then you have the name, a short name in case the full name does not appear on reports correctly. And then you have a check name. The check name is what prints on the checks that you send to the vendor. It could be different in some cases. Here on the right-hand side, you have a different statuses for vendors. Vendors can be active, inactive, or you can actually create a vendor card to be a temporary vendor, and then at a later time you can purge those temporary vendors out of the system, because sometimes temporary vendors, you do not need to maintain all of that detail. The next section here is the class ID. Now this is used if you have a group of vendors that will be using the same general ledger codes, shipping methods, that kind of thing. So when you're creating a vendor and you add it to a class ID, it will automatically default the information from the class to the vendor, so it saves some time on setup. Okay. Here, this section is the address information. You can also access the address information here on this Address tab. Vendors can have multiple addresses. They can have a primary or main address with phone numbers, tax schedules, shipping methods assigned to it. You can also have a remit to address, and you can also have a ship from address. Now, if your tax schedule is different for each address, that drives the taxes that are calculated on invoices and checks. Back on the main screen here, you can see where those address IDs are used. For this demo purpose, you can see that for purchasing, remit to, and ship from, they all just have one main address, the primary address. If this was a 1099 vendor, this option would be open because sometimes vendors have a separate address to send their 1099s to. This field here is a place where if you want to maintain the information of your vendor accounts, have it print on checks or reports, you can enter that in here. Then you have some comments that would print on reports or checks here. You can enter that in. It's not required. Okay, I'm going to check over and take you to the options window. And here's where you will enter in some other detail records for the vendor. You can enter in, their main currency ID. If you have multi-currency, sometimes vendors are only associated with certain currencies. You have rate types, payment terms, grace periods. And here you can also enter in the tax ID, registration information. If there's a default checkbook ID within your bank rec that you want the checks to always be cut from, you can select that default here. Here's where you will select their 1099 information. And then you have some more information here about their credit line that you can select here. Again, this is the address tab that we covered a moment ago. And this button, Accounts, is very important. These will default if you have them associated to a class. Anything that you set up on the class will roll down to your vendor here. However, if you do not have them assigned to a class or do not have a record for a line or an account number for a line on the class, it will be blank. If there is something blank on the class and on the vendor record, then your account number will default from your posting setup. So it's always important to make sure that you have at least the class or the vendor account number assigned, because it could be different from vendor to vendor or ranges of vendors versus what is set up in your main posting accounts. The next tab here is if you use emailing to email different documents to your customers when generating them. So if you're interested in seeing more about the email options and what can be done, you can just send me a note and I can have myself or one of the consultants get back to you. This is a great little tool. Instead of having to print out items from a printer and mail them, you can just email them directly to your vendor. All right. Now for vendor history and reports, if you look underneath this inquiry window right here, you have all different types of ways to view history on a vendor. You can look up specific transactions per vendor. You can look up transactions by document number. Here you can see just their overall payable summary. Here are some items if you're using purchase orders. Then here you can get down to the nitty-gritty for each little vendor. Vendor history, their vendor credit lines, what their yearly is, period reporting information, and 1099 details. So what I would recommend is just coming into each of these little inquiry windows here and playing around with what your vendors have and what they show so you can get a better idea of what the information shows. I'm just going to show you a couple of these. So if I select a vendor here, just gives me a quick overview of what is on the vendor card. Let's just say we'll use vendor yearly. Here you can see the year-to-date for the amount billed and amount paid to this vendor. You can change your summary view on this window to be just your fiscal year or your calendar year. Right now it's showing just the amounts since the last close. So that just kind of gives you, a high view of what is the year-to-date amounts for a specific vendor. We now have a vendor 1099 details window. So let's see if we can find, here we go, Beaumont Construction. Here is a line, or here's the descriptions of all the different 1099 boxes for the year of 2017, just for the month of April. So this would give a summary of what would show up on the 1099. If I select year, Let's see if we can pull up last year's. Nope, there doesn't seem to be any 1099 information entered for that either. Let me see if I can find another client, another customer. Nope. Well, for some reason there isn't any data in here for this demo company. But you can see this would show your totals once your 1099 reconciliations were completed for each month or each year. Your totals would be here. So you can kind of get an idea as a month as a whole or the entire year. Let's see if there's anything in historical. Doesn't seem to be. You can see dividends, different interests, and then the miscellaneous types. All right. If you have more questions about 1099s and how to handle those within Great Plains, just let me know, and we can reach back out to you after the session. All right, so that covered just some of the basic features of payables. Here's your payables integration information. You can print all kinds of detailed reports that can be combined and analyzed with other areas or with other functional areas within Great Plains. Your payables management information will update 3 different other modules or areas within Great Plains. It will update your fixed assets, your bank reconciliation, and finally your general ledger. If you're using the purchase order processing portion, that information is transferred to your payables management when it is actually invoiced. And then if you have refund checks, those will, for a customer, those will transfer to the payables management from receivable management, and then you can print the check. So there are just some few tips and tricks on how things integrate from payables to other areas or from other areas to payables. All right, before I start what's new in 2015, are there any quick questions that I can address for payables management? Okay. There's a question of someone's asking, can you attach invoice directly into GP? Yes, you can. So let's go back to Great Plains. And let's go underneath transactions. And we'll just click on transaction entry. And let's see if there's one already set up. Here we go. So a travel company here, we have this invoice entered. If you notice next to the little looking glass, there is a piece of notebook paper that is here. If you click on that notebook paper, you can manually type in a note, or you can click on the paperclip and attach an actual document or image. So it could be a PDF, it could be a Word document, anything that is saved either on your computer or on a network somewhere. And then when you post this transaction and go to inquiry, that document will still be attached. So it will follow the transaction throughout the entire system. So this is a good opportunity that if you have an invoice that you want to attach to this transaction, you can scan it in, save it into your computer or to a network somewhere, and attach it right here. So you can actually see the physical invoice that is attached to this payables transaction. Here it will show you how many attachments there are. So you can attach quite a few documents. What the file names are, you'll see the date and time, where it originated from, and who's the user. I don't know what the max capacity is for this, but I will tell you it's quite a few. Okay, so that talks about attachments. Are there any other questions? Oh, yes, I see that someone is asking if you can attach these items and receivables. It works the exact same way. Anywhere that you are on a transaction window and you see this little piece of notebook paper, you can attach something, whether you're in receivables, you're in fixed assets, the bank rec, general ledger, anywhere. And that will follow that transaction throughout the entire system. Okay? All right. Are there any other questions regarding general ledger or purchasing? Okay. I'm going to come over to our slide now. I'll give you guys just a quick overview of what is new in GP 2015. So if you're on an older version, these are some good reasons why you need to upgrade to 2015. Not only will fixed assets no longer be supported, but these are some new functionalities. For workflow functionality, you can enable users to have an approval process before specific tasks can be completed. So you can have GL batches be approved, payable batches be approved, vendors approved. So you can set up a task list for specific users to be able to do certain things first before they can move on to the next task and make sure that those are approved. Now, if you're using intercompany enhancements, you will be able to see both sides of your entry, and you can also void an intercompany transaction. So those are two new things that were not available in previous versions. If you're using the fixed assets, you can now close the year end and print a status report of your year-to-date depreciation, the cost basis, your accumulated depreciation, and the net book of all the fixed assets that are affected by this close. This is a report that was not available before. And so this is something that is, really good for detail, when working with your accountants when doing your year close. Another new feature is a warning message that will display when you're entering in a payables transaction for a vendor that has an outstanding PO or an uninvoiced receipt. So this is good so that you can make sure that you're linking your payables transactions to POs if they're out there and you're not missing that step. There's also some payment terms enhancements. So you can enter in due date options with a transaction date. You can add days to your due dates. There's additional due options and additional discount options. Those include next month, months, month day, and annual. So just a few enhancements for 2015. All right, well, that is all I have for now. We can send this PowerPoint presentation over to you after we end the class if you're interested. And we also, like Nancy said, are taking a recording of this so you can see all the different windows that I accessed when referencing this PowerPoint. So with that being said, I'm going to leave this open to see if there are any other questions. We have a good 15 minutes left. I kind of went through that quite quickly. But if there's anything else that you want to see, then I would be more than happy to show that to you. There's a question on, is there a way to have a journal entry automatically entered every month? Well, right now you can use your quick journals, so it will automatically default to all the general ledger accounts, and then you can enter in a debits and credits for it. If there is something that you want to automatically happen, to automatically enter all the transactions and all the details and to be posted, that's something that we would have to write, whether it would be an internal script or a macro. You can also schedule transactions. So let me show you. So here, let's just say you want to schedule payments for a vendor, that they're automatically going to have a payment sent out to them once a month for a specific amount. You can set that up here for your scheduled payments. And that will automatically calculate and amortize your schedule. And so the transactions will automatically be created for you, but it would still need to be posted. If you're on any window within Great Plains and you want some more information on it, click on your F1 button on your keyboard, and it will bring up some information for you regarding that window. It'll give you a quick overview, any related items within Great Plains that relate to that window. You can also see fields and a description of what each of the fields mean. And the same thing for buttons. If there's a button on this window, it'll tell you a detail of what that button is for. So that might be a good option to use after this class, going through each of the windows that I covered, hit your F1 button, and just kind of feel around and get a better idea what each of the fields means and how you can better utilize it for your company. And again, if you're going through this and you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
And thank you for everybody that attended today.
Thank you.